I can't remember a time when she didn't serve the Lord. She had a good childhood. Our mother and dad were Christians, and we were raised in the church, and she was very active in the church. She even taught a class, Sunday school class, at a very young age. She was just sold out for the Lord. And that's something that bonded them together from the very beginning, was their love for the Lord. Betty met Bill at a Youth for Christ meeting.
He brought another girl, and she came with his best friend. Halfway through the evening, Dad turned to his buddy and said, "You want to switch dates?" His buddy was agreeable, and so were the girls, and so it began.
And the girls went along with it, and the guys thought that was great. And I think Bill fell in love with her right from the beginning. They had some strange dates. He took her one time that I remember in particular. He took Betty to the county morgue for a date, which I think he just wanted to see the reaction, and she, of course, was terrified. Then immediately after, they went to a cemetery, and he thought that was a great pleasure. And she was absolutely, like I said, terrorized. Betty just like, she came home and told us where they went, and it was like, do you really like this guy? And she said, yes.
People said we were awfully young and that things were happening too fast. We prayed, "Oh God, just have your way, but please let us get married, because we know that our love will last."
Dad was smitten and asked her dad for her hand in marriage. Ples said, "That girl's only 14 years old," to which my dad replied, "Well, I'll wait till she's 15 then." 15 days after she turned 15, they were married. After 15 months of marriage, they were blessed with a little girl, my sister Debbie. During this time, my mom's mother became terminally ill. As a 16 to 17-year-old, Mom took care of her new baby, her ill mother, her husband, her dad, and her bratty little sister. Those were my Aunt Kay's words, not mine. At that young age, Mom had a routine.
So she was an exceptional teenager, because at that time she was 16, 17 years old. And I can remember going to the zoo with them, and before you know it, here they would be holding hands, skipping down the sidewalk. And as introverted as she was, he could bring that out of her.
Mom didn't necessarily want to be a pastor's wife, but God had other ideas. When Dad was called into the ministry, she humbly surrendered her life to that call as well. Their first pastorate was in Silex, Missouri, a little town of 150 people. They moved to Independence in 1965 to a broken-down building and no congregation. We were incredibly poor. Mom did everything she could to make ends meet, from planting a garden and canning to sewing our clothes and just generally doing without. They prayed and prayed and worked, and God began to build the church and bless their ministry. They began to be invited to foreign countries. I believe they went on close to 30 missionary trips. Dad convinced Mom that the women needed to hear from her, so she reluctantly agreed to public speaking, a role she wasn't comfortable in, but all the same very effective in. She affectionately became known overseas as Mama Betty. My mom and dad were both prayer warriors. All my life, I heard them cry out to God for you and for me. Mom had a bold faith. My dad experienced his first heart attack during the lean years when there was no money for doctors. They prayed instead. That particular night, Mom quoted the promises of healing from Scripture to God and said, "God, if you don't heal my husband, you're a liar." Dad was a little taken aback, but he was about to go into eternity, and Mom had just made God mad. But instead, God honored her faith and healed Dad. Even towards the end of Dad's life, when they were both struggling with dementia, when they prayed, all signs of dementia disappeared, and they prayed with power and authority. What a legacy. Only heaven knows how many meals Mom cooked for her family, her church people, visiting pastors, evangelists, and missionaries. I used to tell Dad, "You have the gift of hospitality, but Mom does all the work." Mom never worried about what kind of impact she had on the world or if she was an influencer. Her deepest joy was to serve God alongside her husband, being diligent and faithful to do whatever needed done. Most of her life was spent doing what we would consider mundane tasks. but God chose to use her simple acts of service and multiply them into eternal impact in the lives of multitudes. But it wasn't so much what she did, but who she was. It was her gentle spirit and her wise ways that had the greatest impact.
She would always make you feel home and welcome, regardless of how long it had been or who you brought with you. She would always make you feel at home. She was very gracious and had the gift of hospitality for sure. But I have said that she's my hero. You know, she taught me what a godly woman should be. It's a lesson that will stay with me forever, you know. And it wasn't so much things that she would tell you, but it was just watching her live the life in front of you. She was a model of what a godly woman should be. And she had that impact on almost anyone that she met.